Hey, I'm David from Kindred Coffee. I'm here today with the Barista Express to make some awesome coffee. We'll be using Milkman coffee today, our blend, and I hope by the end of this video, you've learned a little bit extra about both your coffee machine and our coffee. So the Breville Barista Express comes with everything that we need to make a coffee. Coming with a handle and your baskets, your tamper, steam wand, and the programmable buttons. As far as the basket goes, it comes with 4 baskets, 2 of them being double wall baskets. These baskets are really only for store-bought pre-ground coffee. You get 2 single wall baskets, one for a single dose and the double dose. So the single wall, single shot basket has a really strong V shape. The top of this, you have under extracted beans, and the bottom of this, you have over extracted beans, making it really difficult to dial in the coffee. The single wall double shot basket has much squarer edges, allowing for more even extraction top to bottom. So we'll be using this today. The other 3 baskets aren't really that useful for us today. So the coffee machine obviously comes with a tamper. This tamper is really cool. It locks in just there with a magnet. Nice and easy, nice and out of the way. Now, the hopper for your beans is on the top and the grind adjustment's on the other side. The bigger the number, the bigger the grind size. The smaller the number, the smaller the grind size. With smaller grind size, you're gonna have longer shots. With larger grind size, we're gonna have faster shots. Now, the other variable with grinding is your grinding dose. It's labeled as a grind amount here, with a nice easy display with less and more. So less is the grinder's gonna grind for a less amount of time. The more, the grinder's gonna grind for more. You also have 2 different programs here. So you've got the filter size. So we want to program with just using 1. You might find that for whatever reason, you're getting half as much coffee, and just make sure that you're on the right grind filter size. Around this side of the coffee machine, you've got the steam wand and your hot water dispenser. If you push the dial away from yourself, you'll get hot water. If you pull it towards yourself, you'll get steam. Now, once we have this set up perfectly, we'll notice that if we grind our coffee finer or smaller, you might get a little bit less coffee out the grinder. This is because the motor is working harder. So even though it's grinding for the same amount of time, you might get less coffee. Also, the opposite is also true of this. So if you're going a coarser grind, you might get more coffee grinds out. So when you're checking your grind size, I find it really valuable to check your dose of your grind, and that can give you a clue to where your grind settings are. Common terminology with dialing in coffee is using brew ratio. This can be a confusing term, but it only really means that we are comparing the amount of coffee grinds that we're using to the amount of espresso or the yield of coffee that we're getting out. Commonly, you'll hear a 1:2 or a 1:2.5 ratio. For Milkman, we utilize a 1:2. That just means that we get twice as much espresso out as we use ground coffee. And our recipe today is 19 grams of coffee that we're weighing to a yield or espresso of 38 grams. A great recipe will yield a great result. I love talking about it in the same way of making a cake. When you follow your recipe, your cake turns out great. When you follow your espresso recipe, your espresso also turns out great. Now we're ready to make an espresso. Now, espresso is the first building block in any of your espresso-based beverages, whether that's a flat white, a latte, a cappuccino, or even iced latte. So we want to pull out our handle, ensuring that it's hot, clean, and dry. Getting the guard on. Putting it on the scales, making sure that's tared. It's time to grind our coffee. When we're pulling it out, we're gonna knock the side just a couple times to help collapse the coffee, and then putting it on our scales to check if we need to adjust the weight. We're all good. So we're gonna grab our tamper. Now when we're tamping, I always like to hold the thumbs up with the handle and the tamper, and then when we're tamping, we're going thumbs to thumbs. Pushing down firmly, then releasing. Putting the tamper back, taking the guard off, cleaning up any excess on the rims. This will help ensure that we get a great seal with our grip head. Through our testing, we've found that this coffee machine benefits from a nice long flush. This helps prime the pump and preheat the water that's about to brew your coffee. So directly before you load it in, make sure that you rinse. We're ready to brew a coffee now. So we want to grab a pair of scales, get your espresso cups ready, make sure we hit tear and press go. So now we've got our espresso. We're ready to enjoy. Cheers. Fantastic. So we've just made an espresso. So now we're ready to make espresso for our milk coffees. The process is exactly the same as making an espresso just to drink black, except for we're going to be putting them in our milk cups. It's really important to remember that there's a ratio between the espresso and the milk. So for this coffee machine with this basket size, we recommend about a 200 milliliter cup. If you use a too big a cup, you might find that it starts tasting a bit too milky. And if you use too small a cup, you might find that the coffee flavors are a little bit too predominant. But remember, this is a really easy thing for you to experiment with at home. So we've followed the same process of pulling our espresso, but this time we'll put it into our flat white cups. This coffee machine is a single boiler coffee machine, meaning that it runs on one boiler. So we can't steam and pull our shots at the same time. So it's really important that we get our espresso pulled first. So we're getting ready to steam some milk. But the first thing we need to do is get our milk ready in our pitcher. Today we're using full cream milk, but this works for any of the alternatives. To make sure that we've got the right amount of milk for 2 coffees, we've actually got the perfect measuring cup right here. It's as simple as filling it up twice and pouring it into the pitcher. So that's what I'll do. We've got to make sure that we've got the right pitcher for the job. We've got a really convenient line here, which is at the start where your spout starts. Now it's really important to try to keep your milk level about, if you put your finger on it, the top and the bottom. So I've got the perfect amount of milk here for 2 cups. If you're just gonna make 1 coffee, pick a smaller pitcher. So we've got the right amount of milk in the pitcher. Now it's about location. So we're gonna bring out the steam wand to a 45-degree angle. We're gonna put the milk pitcher's tip towards the steam wand, locking it in place. We wanna keep approximately 1 centimeter gap from the wall of the pitcher to the tip of the steam wand. The depth of the steam wand should be more than halfway, almost 2/3 of the way up the steam wand. We're gonna make sure that the steam tip is approximately halfway along the milk jug. We can adjust the depth of the steam tip by moving the pitcher up or down. It's important to notice that we're not moving the angle of the steam wand at all while we're doing this. So to get more foam, we want to move this pitcher down to allow more air in. And to get less foam, we want to move this pitcher up. To get the steam, we're going to pull the handle towards us and we're going to wait for us to get a consistent run of steam. This can take a little while, so be patient with your coffee machine. As you hear it chug to life, you'll notice that we'll get less and less water and more steam. It's really important to let this steam really bed in before we go to texture our milk. So we're going to quickly turn it off and we're going to put our milk pitcher in really quickly. So off, pull your milk wand out and put it immediately back on. We are burying some of the steam on. We're allowing extra air in at the beginning of our steaming. A sign that you're doing this correctly is we've got a really good whirlpool, and that's where the milk is spinning around the jug quickly, and we don't have to raise our voice to be heard. If you find yourself feeling like you would need to yell in a room, then you're either adding too much or too little air. As the milk gets warm, we want to keep our hand there until we feel like we sort of can't hold it anymore. Then you can take it off, count to 3, 1, 2, 3, and then turn it off. It's really important that we don't immediately take our steam wand out, as it's still purging quite a lot of steam, and that will create large bubbles. Now that it's stopped steaming, we can pull it out, and it's time to wipe this steam wand immediately. So give it a good wipe, put it back over the drip tray, and then purge your steam wand of any milk, turning it back off. As we can see, we've made really silky milk. So we've done a great job of steaming our milk. Once we've finished cleaning our steam wand, we want to get straight into swirling our milk pitcher. This will help it keep the microfoam incorporated with the milk. Now, since we've steamed enough for 2 coffees, we want to split. And we want to split about 70% of the milk over to a jug, pouring constantly. And then we want to pour that 20% back. This is to help ensure that we've got the same amount of microfoam in both pitchers. Now, grab our espresso. We're swirling our small jug, swirling the espresso, and we're getting into pouring. So we're starting our first stage of our pour, nice and gentle, and from a high vantage point. Then we're getting nice and close to pour our latte out. The most things to really consider when pouring latte out is how close we get the milk pitcher to the crema and our flow rate. So we really want to be trying to push the microfoam onto the crema. For our second coffee, it's the same process again. We're going to give this big pitcher a big swirl and pouring gently across, but quickly, to our second milk pitcher, stamping it out, giving our espresso a swirl again, swirling our milk. Once we're ready to pour, we're starting the pour from up high again, around and around, building up that crema. And then when we're ready to pour latte out, nice and close and nice and gentle. To finish off, we're bringing it back up and then signing it off with a gentle pour through the middle. You've made it. We've made espressos and made some great flat whites. So it's time to enjoy the coffees and the labor of all the work that we've put in. So here's cheers, and yeah. Do I have a moustache?